Hi, and welcome to Cocoa Disaster. I'm Chorpsway.
And I'm Xain Zero.
And today, we're coming together to talk about the winter season. We've just started to get a little bit into spring, both in real life and in anime. But, you know, with all of the shows that we were watching now over, or at least at halfway points for the ones that are continuing on to this core, thought it was time to get together and just talk about what we've thought about the shows from last season. And I liked a lot of these. I think that, you know, there were some surprises in there, and some that I expected to be good, but overall, I'm pretty positive about this season that just finished.
Yeah, same here. I liked pretty much everything I followed through on. It was a lot of really good stuff, and it was nice to have such a high-quality season.
Yeah, and there's a lot of diversity in the shows that we watched and how they sort of succeed and failed, comedies and stuff like that, so yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. But first, we have just a little bit of news to catch up on, since it's been a week since we recorded the last one. First off, not only did we get the Netflix release of Violet Evergarden, the day that the last episode aired in Japan, but we're also seeing a new project in process from KyoAni. It says a completely new work for the anime, so my assumption is that a movie is coming out of it, but with KyoAni, it's impossible to tell with some of this stuff what sort of, like, multimedia kind of stuff they're trying to plan for. That could be interesting. Personally, Violet Evergarden wasn't entirely my jam, but for the people who seem big on it, I'm excited that they have more to look forward to. Especially after how long it took for us just to get the Violet Evergarden anime proper. I'm trying to think now, has any of KyoAni's light novel stuff been released in English? I don't think it has.
I don't think so either.
I wonder if that's ever a plan for them to bring those over. I guess with, like, light novels sort of becoming a bigger thing in America, with, like, these, like, online retailers doing translations and stuff, maybe we'll see some of that stuff come through. Since they are doing their own, like, publishing thing, it might be interesting to see. So that's happening. The heavy metal idol group Babymetal is getting its own graphic novel.
That rules.
Not manga. A graphic novel from, like, being made in the US.
Yes, that rules.
I just want to make sure that people understood. It is called Apocrypha, The Legend of Babymetal. Being published by Z2 Comics, and yeah, it's in collaboration with the group's producer, Koba Metal, and the Hollywood production company Amuse Group USA. And it's supposed to come out in October. Babymetal themselves described the story as discover the myth of the worldwide musical sensation, Babymetal. Tasked with defeating the forces of darkness and division, the metal spirits must travel through a variety of eras of time, assuming different forms and identities. What we are seeing is not the Babymetal of the present. It's the original story based on Babymetal you've never heard before. The long-hidden metal spirits apocrypha of the metal resistance will emerge.
This sounds like the best thing?
So I didn't realize this. Apparently they were on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to promote their latest album, and that album, Metal Resistance, went on to rank in the US Billboard's Top 200 for its first week.
Cool.
And it's the first time a Japanese artist has broken into the top 40 in 53 years. So, wow, congratulations to Babymetal, genuinely. Wow. They are doing a world tour, I believe, right now, and currently in the US.
Nice.
And it's weird, it's mostly, like, middle America, like, sort of stuff. Like, not the coasts where you'd think that would be more prominent. Like, you look at sort of, like, the Miku Expos, they're all done on the West Coast, and maybe, like, in Texas. But, like, this is, like, they're going to Kansas, they're Georgia, North Carolina, very strange. But maybe that's where they know that the real fans are.
Yeah, I was gonna say that they know where the real spirit of metal is.
You've seen that, like, Facebook thing where Rob Zombie was hanging out with Babymetal, right? Because they opened for him before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, the one where a bunch of old men are like, oh, I can't believe you would be friends with Babymetal. They're ruining metal, and all he does is, like, horribly own all of his fans for doing that.
Yeah, Rob Zombie is cool.
Yeah, man. Look, he knows where the future lies.
Yeah.
It's just such a wild thing. I'm glad Babymetal exists. I'm glad they're getting a fucking graphic novel based off of them.
Same, extremely.
This is a very peculiar type of, like, crossover appeal that you don't see a lot in, like, Japanese music, for sure. So it is cool that they're getting, like, a recognition in this way. It's awesome. It's, like, definitely one step above, like, all the times that, like, Ore Ska Band was in the Warped Tour. So yeah, awesome. Now, in sadder news, plenty of discussion has been around this, but a director and Studio Ghibli co-founder, Isao Takahata, passed away earlier this week. At the time we were recording, it would have been April 5th. And that's unfortunate. So, Takahata was like the director of movies such as Grave of the Fireflies, Only Yesterday, Pompoko, and My Neighbor the Yamadas. And then his last directorial duty was on The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which was in 2013. So that's kind of sad. Those are a lot of, like, Miyazaki gets a lot of credit within Studio Ghibli for sort of the big movies, but these still are very, like, prominent films for Studio Ghibli. You know, these are big ones that a lot of people remember, especially Grave of the Fireflies. It's sad to hear that he has passed.
Yeah.
Because all that leaves is grumpy old Miyazaki still, like, clinging to his fake retirement.
Please, retire, please.
He can't. He just keeps getting so bad when he sees the anime industry as it is today. He just can't stop. Someone needs to stop him. His son tried. No one liked his movie, so he had to keep coming back. Ugh. It's a shame. And then, it's not sad news, but I learned today that there is a To Love Ru Darkness game app that's ending its service in May. And I only bring this up because it's even, like, more clearly, like, a money grab sort of thing, and, like, a pandering sort of thing than a lot of gacha stuff. Because what it is it's literally a game where you pay real money to buy outfits for the To Love Ru girls and then take pictures of them. I just feel like it's the most direct I've ever seen a mobile game be like, we'll just give you what you want.
Why?
But I'm almost surprised it only lasted for a year before its service ended. Just a weird thing. Man, mobile games are crazy.
Don't I know it?
Or mobile moneymakers. I guess not even all of them have to be games. I guess the only other, like, big thing is that the Japanese government is now trying to get its internet providers to block access to like pirate manga sites.
Oh.
Yeah, I think they reported an estimate that they lost 400 billion yen worth of sales over like a 5-month period from last year as, like, these pirate sites are getting bigger.
Wow.
So it's pretty nuts. And I don't think they have, like, a net neutrality sort of thing like we do. So they are specifically talking to, because these also aren't all, like, Japanese sites. Like, some of these are Chinese sites that are getting through and being able to do that. So they need to kill it at the source by just making it so that they block all of the, all access through it through their internet providers.
Huh.
And it's hard to say, like, how much that is accurate, but I think that in terms of sort of this piracy, it's definitely going to affect Japan more if Japanese people are pirating manga than, like, the American audience, since a lot of the stuff that ends up getting pirated is stuff that doesn't come over anyways.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, it's hard to say, but 400 billion yen's not a number to sneeze at, so we'll see how that goes. I don't know if Japan has ever had sort of big, like, access blocks sort of like that, so we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, it's kind of weird to think about, especially in the wake of sort of, like, net neutrality talks in America.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's really all the big news that's happening, so let's cut to the chase. Anime. There's a lot of it. And we watched some. So let's talk about the shows that we watched. And the first one I want to open up with is one that both of us watched to completion fairly recently, just as catch up. And that is The Ancient Magus Bride. And man, did The Ancient Magus Bride really end on a not a downer, but a very heavy arc.
Yeah, that was some shit.
Yeah, and like, as much as I appreciate it as sort of like building up characters, especially ones that sort of like they're building up Joseph, you know, he is a villain character, but they do give justification to the things he does, not as sort of like to make him pitiable or to make him sort of like, you know, try to say, oh, he's not a, you know, a bad person still, but something to expand his character and explain why he is the way he is in a way that is like, it was pretty compelling. I liked the story of Joseph a lot.
Yeah, that was some real messed up stuff to watch.
Yeah, so Ancient Magus Bride, when we cut off the first season,
Chisei had just made her wand, I'm pretty sure?
Yeah, she had just put together the wand, and then nothing good happened from there. I really wish Chisei could just get a break. Like, Chisei literally doesn't get, like, a day off at any of this. It's always one catastrophe after another. I just want her to be happy once.
I mean, she seemed pretty happy at the end of the show?
Right, but, like, it's still, like... Why can't we don't get a lot of episodes where it's just like, oh, Chisei gets to enjoy the magical world as it is. Something terrible is always happening.
Look, magic is fucked up, and the show is just giving you a warning about that.
I mean, you're not wrong. Because we sort of had in the beginning, we sort of had the bit where Chisei, through a surge of magic, sort of like overloads. And so she has to be taken to the fairy world, where she sort of... This is a thing that happens a lot in the second core, where it's about Chisei's development in self-respect more than anything else. Sort of like recognizing that when she keeps saying things like, it doesn't matter what happens to me, it's about the people around me and who I can affect, that she is, in a sense, like lying to herself because she does not have a lot of self-worth, and trying to sort of build that up within her to sort of understand that she has been through bad things, but it's about moving past and understanding that the things that have happened to her are not her fault. So she doesn't need to shoulder all of this blame.
Yeah, a lot of this was Chisei slowly regaining her will to live, as she herself says towards the end.
And also a development of Chisei and Elias's relationship, because it really starts to discuss sort of like the idea that both of them are looking at each other in very different ways. And it comes from sort of that dichotomy of the human world and the magic world, and the way that they look differently at life and relationships and things like that. And it creates this mismatch that ultimately leads them to break apart for a while and kind of have to re-examine the way that they relate to each other.
Yeah, but there's also parts of them that wind up being the same, which is what brought them back to each other. Like, the way that both of them want to be appreciated for who they are, instead of just being, like, in Elias's case, some type of whatever the heck he is, and in Chisei's case, a slay beggar. Right,
so it ultimately comes down to them getting together because of that. But, like, we have the short arc with Chisei and Stella, where sort of we meet more of the people who live around Elias, and we meet this girl Stella, who, because of a wandering, like, demon, she yells like, oh, I wish you, my brother, were never my brother. And so he gets kidnapped away, and Elias and Chisei have to work with Stella to sort of get him back. And again, it's about misunderstanding, it's about relationships, and that's where we see more of that develop. And this leads to Elias getting, like, insanely jealous that Chisei ends up having friends.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have this distinction between, like, the types of relationships that humans have and the way they interact with each other. So he becomes insanely jealous, and after a mission in which they try to get back a dragon who's being sold on the black market thanks to Joseph's meddling, in his trying to build a chimera, basically. Elias tries to kill Stella to give Chisei the chance to live, and that's where sort of the big break happens, is Elias assumes that, first of all, that Stella is tearing them apart, and that he has to do this for Chisei without her knowing because she's too selfless to suggest a solution to her cursed problem. And so it gets kind of uncomfortable in that moment, in sort of like how it is a scary sort of relationship thing going on, but it's done to show that this is a bad thing, and that, you know, Elias needs to learn about this and sort of understand the nuance of human relationship in a way that, like, other magical people don't understand either. Like when he's talking to the king and queen of the forest, and they're sort of like, why don't you just kidnap her back and take care of her? That's how we do it in Magic World. And he's like, no, I have to try to understand it from her perspective and, you know, do the things that she would want me to do.
Yeah, a lot of this really gives you the feeling of the alienness of Elias to the human world.
Right. It really, you could fall into a trap, like, partway through of like, oh, he's sort of human, because he does talk about sort of like developing emotions and stuff like that. But it's very clear here that there's still this huge divide between humans and magic. I guess there is one, like, nice episode in between where Alice and Chisei go out for Christmas to buy gifts for their teachers.
Yeah, that was a nice episode. That was before everything terrible happens.
Right. It was cute, and it gives development to Alice, because while we do have a little bit of information about Alice and
Renfred, I believe his name is.
Yeah, Renfred. Yeah. We have a little bit of information about them, but this helps to develop sort of like how Alice got to where she was and sort of the things that have happened there. And it does have sort of this parallel, more or less, to Chisei and how she was picked up by Elias and things like that. And so it's a good, like, character moment where it's about not only, like, learning something new about these other characters, but then developing, you know, the main cast just through the different ways that they've sort of, like, grown up out of this less than ideal environment.
Yeah, I think that's one point in common that all of the central characters in this show have, that they all have some kind of trauma bound to them, and their relationships through other people are helping them slowly heal through that trauma.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing that's going on with this story. And I think, for the most part, it succeeds. It's just sometimes, like, hard to watch because of how brutal it can get in its depictions of stuff.
Yeah, in a sometimes scarily realistic ways, too.
Yeah, because the last episodes is sort of like, Chisei is in a way forced to relive her childhood trauma, but through the ability to sort of fully look at the situation for what it is instead of how her memory is of the situation, it comes to this point where she sort of realizes the discrepancies between what she remembers and what is true about her recollections and the way that she grew up and how that's affected her.
Right, and one of the things that she points out during that whole bit is that this is, like, the first time she can actually remember the happy times she had with her family since that happened.
Right, and it's such a, you know, it's a chance for not only the character, but the viewer to sort of reinterpret how things happened with them, and not to, again, like with Joseph, it's not to excuse the things that happened, but to put the perspective on it that sort of makes it a little more bittersweet instead of just, like, purely evil or purely bad.
Yeah, like, I think one of the strongest parts of that whole bit was towards the end when Chisei says, "I can't forgive you, not yet, but at least I can now start to move on."
Right, it's a very important thing, and sort of like, that becomes the sort of the conflict between Joseph and Chisei at the end is sort of, they realize that they are very similar to each other in that they were mistreated a lot as they grew up, but it's the things that they have done since then that define who they are now. And so Chisei has finally given this chance to move forward past this and sort of believe in herself again and, you know, her abilities, and Joseph still hasn't gotten over what his whole life has been about. And the thing is, like, so much of the way that Joseph has turned out is out of his own accord. A lot of what Chisei's done is completely out of her ability to have changed it at the time. And sort of, you know, it's sort of like, you know, finding yourself stuck in a hole versus digging it yourself kind of thing.
How ironic, given that Joseph was a gravedigger.
Yeah. And so, it leads to a nice conflict at the end where sort of like they maybe come to a little bit of an understanding, but the idea is sort of that Chisei and Joseph are now like connected in a way. So Joseph is going to sort of reduce the curse that Chisei has so that she's not going to die so soon. And Chisei is going to use this to help them both move forward through their trauma.
Maybe we should actually mention what the curse was so people aren't a little lost.
Right, so if you didn't watch through the show, the thing about Joseph is, before this, there are references to Kartophilus, who is, within, like, religious myth, a wandering Jew who did something untoward to Jesus as he was going to the cross, and because of it, has ended up stuck living forever, basically in, like, eternal pain. So Joseph, as a young child, I think, like, 1,000 years ago, it's a long time ago, he meets Kartophilus and sort of tries to heal him, but to no avail, realizing sort of that this man is cursed forever. And Joseph is the child of a gravekeeper, and I believe he is the child of a witch as well, so he is bullied and sort of ostracized from his community for this relationship. And his hope through this whole thing is that eventually he'll be able to do something useful. He'll be able to save Kartophilus and be able to move away from where he lives and sort of be able to find happiness somewhere else. And eventually he realizes that the way it works is Kartophilus is basically never going to get better because of his curse. He is just, like, you know, cursed to never die, but constantly, like, decompose. So what Joseph does is he, through some kind of fucked up ritual, kind of like how Chisei and Joseph in the anime sort of, like, switch eyes and, like, body parts as sort of like an exchange for compatibility, he enters into Kartophilus's body and starts, like, traveling around the world, killing people, sort of replacing his body parts with ones that are working in order to try and create a body that no longer hurts, that allows him to sort of move forward from all his suffering, but finds that no matter what he does, he is always going to be messed up forever.
Yeah, and along the way he loses his sense of self and he can no longer tell if he's Joseph or Kartophilus anymore. It's the two of them as one person.
Right, and so this has been going on for hundreds, maybe 1,000 years, and so he can't remember what he's done, he doesn't understand why he must be cursed for things he can no longer remember, and sort of we see the degradation of his psyche over all these years that he's forced to live with pain and suffering that he doesn't understand why or how it's happening, basically.
And then the other side of this is that the reason why Kartophilus, Joseph, what have you, captured Chisei is because while trying to retrieve one of the dragons that was captured on the black market, it went completely out of control and its magic went wild, and the only way Chisei could stop it was by absorbing some of the dragon's magic into it herself, which gave her a fucked up dragon hand that is cursed to kill her, to shorten her already short lifespan, and that is why Kartophilus wants it.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yes.
But yeah, I think by the end, sort of the way that they've recontextualized all of these relationships and shown that, like, again, it's not that these things are okay, but that we learn to move forward from them and come to understand others better because of the conflicts we have.
I think one of the important parts is that Chisei doesn't actually kill Cartaphilus. She sends him to sleep for some amount of time to give him some reprieve from all this pain and suffering he's been feeling for the past millennia.
Yeah. And, like, there's a great bit with Chisei and Elias where Elias sort of says, like, from now on, I'll never do anything that you don't specifically say you want me to do. And Chisei points out that's not what this relationship thing is about. It's that if we come to a point where we don't agree with each other, we need to be able to discuss our problems and work through them to find a compromise.
Right.
I think that's sort of like the theme of the story is sort of like, you know, it's not about everything being perfect. It's about finding the compromise, finding the way forward when these sorts of things happen.
Right. Yeah, and they do eventually reach an understanding after this whole ordeal is over, that they actually talk it out and work out the differences that caused them to separate for a while. Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it as a whole. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, as did I. It was a very good show, very bittersweet and melancholy at times, but also kind of wondrous and mysterious when it wasn't being that.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I liked this, and I'm glad that it got, I'm glad that it got the adaptation, because I think it does some nice things with the ability to be animated.
I'm just kind of glad it ended where it did, on a point where even if it doesn't get another season, it feels like it could end there and it would be fine.
Right, it's sort of like, it's the end of an arc, we get the idea that these characters have evolved in some way, and they can move forward even without us being able to see it, and we still get sort of a closure to who they are, because we get just the inkling that they've moved forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Then, next up, this is one that's continuing on next season, but let's talk about the first half of Record of Grancrest War.
Alright, so, Record of Grancrest War may have a title that sounds familiar to some of you because of Record of Lodos War. And this is a series of light novels by the same author, so it's very much a fantasy adventure sort of story. And watching it really feels like some kind of 90s fantasy adventure, but with like modern day animation. Mm-hmm. And the background of this is that there are essentially two powerful major nations in there, the Union and the Alliance, which is great. They have full names, but everybody just calls them the Union and the Alliance.
Great, okay.
Yeah, so the Union and the Alliance are ruled by lords who have crests, which basically give them magical power, and the leaders of the Union and the leaders of the Alliance have these two powerful crests that if merged together would basically form the Grand Crest and would unite the continent in peace. And at the start of the story, the Union and the Alliance were going to have two of their major leaders be wed together, and the Grand Crest would be formed and peace would come to the land. However, at the wedding, something goes horribly wrong, and demons invade the wedding and kill the two heads of the houses, not the people that were to be married, but their parents. And this sort of basically puts an end to what would have been thought to be the start of an era of peace. And basically, the world goes back to being chaotic. Demons are roaming the land, and there's a lot of political tension between the Union and the Alliance because neither is sure what caused the demons to appear, and they think they could have betrayed each other. And that's where our story begins, like a year or so after that event occurs. And it follows a young man named Theo, who is from a small town somewhere, and his town is basically oppressed by the lord ruling over that area, and he is trying to find a way to get political power to free his land. And the interesting thing about Theo is that he has a crest despite not actually being a lord, and during his journey he runs into Silica, who was at the disastrous wedding, and the two of them form a contract between Lord and Mage, and it follows the two of them as they try to essentially... Silica is plotting to have Theo unite the continent as a hero to put an end to the war between the Union and the Alliance and form the Grancrest and unite everything. And so far, the show is pretty interesting. The early few episodes follow Theo's early attempts to gain a political foothold, but they don't work out after after they are basically invaded by the leader of, I believe, the Alliance. And they basically become vassals of the Earl of Alterk, who is a very eccentric man who, this is going to sound ridiculous, I'm aware, but he basically makes contracts with various female mages and puts them into skimpy outfits, but he's actually a good person and basically gives them life skills to succeed. It's very ridiculous.
Okay.
But, they basically work for him for a while, and basically what happens is that, talks break down between the Union and the Alliance, and they go to war, and the Earl of Alterk is defeated, and the beginning of the second half of the show is basically Theo and the rest of the people that were allied with Alterk now need to find a way to strike back before, the Alliance destroys the Union entirely.
Okay.
And, one of the things that this show does a lot of is, like, it goes into a lot of detail about the big political situations, but it also goes into detail about our characters and their motivations and how they go on. Like, it doesn't really seem to be anything more than, like, a nice fun fantasy adventure that actually cares about the world that is being lived in and such. And it's all pretty charming.
Yeah, it seems from what it is, it's, like, very sort of, like, what you expect out of fantasy, just maybe, like, with a little more, like, thought and care put into it.
Yeah. I never actually saw Record of Lodoss War, but I imagine it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd assume as much as well, because I believe this one also is based on a tabletop role-playing game by the same dude.
That would make sense. There's a lot of things in this that seem like they would be in a tabletop game.
Mm-hmm. And from the way you describe it, it seems very, like, say, a Fire Emblem, where it's definitely not, like, a pinnacle of writing, but it accomplishes what it needs to do to give the space for these, like, characters to interact in a way that's exciting or interesting.
Yeah, I've seen people say it's very Fire Emblem-y before, though that may be because of the term Lord and all that, but yeah, It's a really charming show, and I think one of my favorite parts is that Theo and Silica actually play off each other pretty well. They're a fairly likable pair of leads, and in a very nice twist, they already confess their love for each other before the halfway point of the show, and that's very nice.
Yeah, that's nice. They're not drawing it out or anything. The only thing I've really heard about it as, like, a negative is that it seems like it's very awkwardly paced from episode to episode.
Yeah, I can see that. Sometimes they do a lot of world building in one of the episodes, but then other times something exciting happens, like, oh, the evil Draculax has taken over captured the leader of the werewolves, and we need to go free them, and that was like a whole episode, and a lot of ththings happened, and it caused Theo and Silica to basically gain possession of that piece of territory.
Okay.
But yeah, right now, since it's half over, I don't have any real full thoughts about the show. I'm looking forward to where it's going in the future, seeing, all this come together and seeing what themes and what moments rise up out of this show.
All right, cool. It's good to hear. It does seem like it's got its exciting moments, which I think is good. Like, it's not all caught up in sort of world building, which seems to, like, slow the pace down, but it's got enough back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely tries to maintain a good balance, and sometimes it succeeds, and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. I guess in discussion of another show with, like, kind of weird pacing stuff, I am halfway through Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card Arc. And so, Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card Arc is a sequel to the, I think now 20-year-old Cardcaptor Sakura series, and it doesn't take a lot of time to get you reintroduced into the world. It's sort of like, you know, the first bit of the first episode is sort of like, oh, you remember all of the major characters in Cardcaptor Sakura? Here they are, very quickly introduced, so we can get right into sort of the card capting, as it were. So, for the first half, it follows sort of the same sort of progression that the original did, and sort of like each episode involves Sakura sort of like falling into some kind of magical disturbance in the world, and then having to solve it and figure out that it's, you know, based around some kind of magical creature that she captures within these cards. But as sort of like a way to make it so that she's not overpowered or anything, what's happened is all the cards from the first season have gone completely blank and have been replaced with clear versions of the cards that, like, they're see-through, like sort of laminated plastic kind of stuff. And so part of the mystery is figuring out what happened to the old ones, and then what these new creatures are and how they sort of play into Sakura's life. Because they are a different sort of magic that all of her friends, who normally would be able to sense this sort of magic and be able to help her, have no ability to sense. They don't know what this magic is, and no one seems to have any idea what's going on, including the viewer, because outside of sort of small snippets of sort of like Sakura having these weird dreams that relate to sort of an antagonist or, you know, something that explains the magic that's going on, there isn't a lot of concrete information on like, oh, well, this is clearly leading to something. Right up until the end of this first core that we've gotten to. Like, just finally have we gotten sort of like, oh, so Sakura has this new friend named Akiho, who seems pretty normal. She does all of these sort of fun things with Sakura as sort of like a new friend, sort of initiate her with it, but she has a butler who seems to be attached to some sort of like organization of mages that we just figured out maybe like interfering with the magic that Sakura has dealt with before, and sort of may have their own plans for domination or some kind of magical, upheaval or something like that. Again, we don't have a lot of details yet about what's actually going on, but we're very slowly getting there. But the episodic nature is still fun. It's still sort of Sakura does something fun with her friends. Something horrific happens, like they go to the aquarium and just like all of the water in one of the tanks starts flooding the aquarium and like, threatening people, and so they have to figure out what's causing it. And it's, it's about solving those mysteries, and some of them are big like that, some of them are a little smaller, where it's sort of like all of the toys in nearby playground have been turned upside down through some sort of magic, and they have to figure out what's causing it. And what's interesting about it is whereas like the first series, a lot of the magic was sort of anthropomorphized into sort of like cutesy character designs, where it's like, oh, here's Rainy or here's Snowy, and they're like sort of like little sprite characters. Instead, we're dealing with a lot more sort of like abstract ideas when it comes to what powers they're getting. Like the ability to sort of change gravitational pull for Sakura, or the ability of flight, or the concept of action, where sort of like the idea in the particular scenario was like a bunch of trees at Sakura's school were suddenly coming to life and being given the ability to act. So that was sort of the villain of that episode. And so it is interesting in that it does provide different scenarios with which she fights. And it's an extension of the original story in a way that is charming and nostalgic. But I'm very happy they're finally getting to the plot part, because they keep throwing in short snippets of like, oh, something's gonna build up, and then pulling back on it. And then they keep doing that for like 11 episodes.
Oh, I know how that feels.
Yeah, so it's nice to finally have sort of like, okay, we have some forward momentum, we have some information coming around, because it also feels like there are a lot of characters in the series that sort of have an idea of what's going on, but they can't tell Sakura for some reason. So again, it's sort of frustrating being kept out of the loop and knowing that it's trying to go somewhere and that it won't. So with this second core, I'm very happy that we're going to sort of go together and sort of figure out this mystery and sort of like put a face to the threat that Sakura is facing.
I hope it winds up being satisfying.
Yeah, and from what I've heard from people who read the manga, it is good. It still has that charm, but it's definitely a lot of like, all right, let's at least have an idea of what we're going up against. You know, what finally is going to be sort of the momentum of the story.
Nice.
It's a little cute because with 20 years in between, the way that they've decided to handle this is, well, they've gone up a year in school, so now they're all in middle school. And inexplicably, they live in 2018, where, like, Sakura's, like, mascot friend, basically, Garo, plays Dark Souls. And then, like, they have laptops, and they have smartphones, and they talk via Skype. And, like, there's a point where, Sakura's friend Tomio, who's, like, pretty in love with her, and sort of, like, her magical identity, builds drones to follow her around to take movies of all of her, like, sort of captures, because she can't always keep up with them. So it's, like, weirdly into new technology for really no reason, but it's charming.
This sounds like the show screaming, hey, we're in 2018, we swear, this is not suddenly the 1990s again.
Right, it's very much like, well, what if Cardcaptor Sakura took place in 2017 and now we're in 2018? So it's cute. I don't feel like, oh, this is like breaking canon or whatever. It's charming. And that's really true about the whole show. A lot of the music is very much the same. A lot of the staff has been the same. So it all feels very nostalgic and familiar and fun. So I'm excited to see it going forward now that we have sort of a direction to go.
Okay, then.
Yeah, it's nice. If you did enjoy the original Cardcaptor Sakura and maybe were on the fence about this, I think this is worth picking up just to see how you feel about it. It's still got the same sort of humor, the same sort of like vibe to it. So it'll be, if nothing else, like a nice trip down memory lane. Yeah, so I'm happy about that so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And now, to come back to a show that both of us watched, at least for a little bit, let's talk about Darling in the Franxx, because we were hesitantly excited about it at the start of the season when we didn't know anything about it outside of sort of its basic setup. And let's talk about what it's like now that it's halfway through its story.
Okay, so on my notes for the show before I started watching it, I wrote down two things. Please be good, and please don't be horny. And, I was... You can guess which one of those was wrong!
Oh my god, it is, like... I feel like in some ways it's, like, way hornier than even, like, Kill la Kill.
It's really weird because all of the horny metaphors are really direct, but it's also weirdly wholesome in spite of that. It's baffling. It's
crazy how, like, oh my god, I literally lost it when they got to the doggy style mech piloting. Like,
yeah, that made me lose it.
I've seen a lot of jokes going around that the Darling in the Franxx writers sort of fit that Garth Marenghi's Dark Place thing of, I know writers who use subtext and they're cowards, and that feels a lot like Darling in the Franxx, where it's like, they really want you to know this is a story about sexuality. So, like, this show feels like it's trying to do two Gainax things at once. It's trying to do sort of the mecha thing, right? Like maybe like a Gunbuster or something. And also trying to do Fooly Cooly, in that it's a story about a pink-haired girl who teaches a younger person about sort of like budding sexuality and romance and relationships. In a very, like, I don't know, unhealthy way. But, like, it has ramped both of those things up to such a degree that I feel, like, uncomfortable watching it, which is why I've dropped it.
Okay, so where did you drop it?
Like 2 or 3 episodes in, honestly.
Okay, so I can tell you that comparison to Fooly Cooly is wrong.
Okay, so tell me about this first arc, so I basically just got the setup of the story and everything.
Okay, so I did not think the show was gonna be as good as it wound up being, because the show takes a pretty big jump up in quality after Hiro finally gets in the robot. Because that took a bit of time as well. Him actually getting in the robot and piling with 02. And after that, after Hiro got in the robot, the show became more about the relationships between the characters and how extremely weird their society is, and how 02 might not be the perfect, the maniac pixie dream girl that she seems to be.
Okay.
So, like, after Hiro got in the robot, we had a beach episode.
Uh-huh.
But it was the most wholesome beach episode you'd ever imagine, because it was just about our characters kind of, like, talking things out about, like, Hiro's being, like, everybody throwing a party about Hiro finally being able to pilot the robot, because everybody admires him, and everybody thinks he's this great guy because he came up with the great idea to give everybody names, and then they just kind of explore this weird abandoned ruin of a town, and it starts to make things, like, unsettling, like, what happened to all of these people, and what happened to people to make them move into this way, and it starts to delve into the characters' relationships with each other, and them trying to, like, work out their goofy teenage hormone problems, and in the background, one of the things that's going on is that their entire team is like a test case scenario, because we get to meet another FranXX team, and they're all very homogenized and not very teenagery at all, and all of their robots look the same, compared to our team, which is full of extremely anime teenagers goofing around and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like making their whole society a lot more suspicious and weird, and it's all very odd, I can say.
Okay. I think what turned me off more than anything else is the leering sort of sexuality that it has for all of its characters. Like, all of its female characters, really. Like, the first episode where that girl gets, like, her ass grabbed by the old man, and then, like, the shots in the locker room, things like that feel very,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
More so than the ass-in-face shots with the robot driving. So, okay, so again, you've seen farther than I have. Does it grok that, like, the metaphor that they're going for with the fact that, Hiro couldn't pilot the things for so long, like an erectile dysfunction thing? Like, how sex is the series past the first couple episodes with the way that they have developed sort of this sort of story?
It seems to be more like that the pilots have to have some sort of relationship, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic one for them to pilot. Like, at least the reason why Hiro was able to pilot with 02 is because he's the first person that accepted 02 as not being some type of, like, weird monster. Like, he tries to accept her as a human being, but one of the interesting things about, like, the second half of the first season is that Hiro desperately tries to get 02 to open up to him because he wants to try and build a relationship with her, but she isn't interested in having one, and you'd think that this would cause them to, like, have problems piloting the robot, but it really doesn't happen until, like, the end of the first season, because it kind of left off with a cliffhanger of where you really get to see that 02 is extremely fucked up because of something that happened to her in the past, or rather, the very nature of who she is.
Okay.
And in another episode, one of the things that happens is, like, a couple people try switching partners for a while. Like, Futoshi switches partners to Kokoro, and Kokoro's other partner, who, I need to look up the name, hold on a sec.
Is it the small goblin child?
No, the small goblin child is surprisingly the most functional of the cast with his partner.
Wow. Who are the other boys? There's Garo, right? He's the blonde one.
Yes, the one who's unfortunately trapped in a love triangle.
Ugh. And then it's the kid with the slick back hair then, right? That's the last guy?
Okay, yeah. So, it's Futoshi and Kokoro. They switch partners. Futoshi now pilots with Ikuno, and Kokoro now pilots with Mitsuru, and none of them have any romantic feelings for each other because it's heavily implied that Mitsuru has feelings for Hiro and Ikuno has feelings for Ichigo. And during this whole partner switch thing, Ikuno actually suggests, "Can I pilot with Ichigo?" And it does not work.
Okay, so girls can't pilot with girls. Or at least that's what's being implied by that particular thing.
I don't think that's the case because I think people, looked at the readings that were going on, and it seemed like while Ichigo was outputting normally, Ikuno was kind of hesitant and couldn't output as much.
Okay.
So, I think, it's more about the relationship, they have to have some sort of functioning relationship between the two characters. The reason why Kokoro and Mitsuru can pilot together is because that they have some sort of trusting of each other, that Kokoro wants Mitsuru to be able to open up and to express himself, and he's able to do that with Kokoro, whereas he can't really open up with Ikuno. They just kind of work. They're just more like workmates rather than having any sort of out of work relationship, if that makes sense.
So it's more of a human compatibility and sort of a sexual compatibility.
Yeah, that's definitely what they've been trying to go for here.
Okay. I see bits of animation from it, and it looks really good. I think it still looks great as a series.
Yeah, it is definitely a very nicely animated show.
It's just definitely, it's a rough first impression, I think.
Yeah, like I said, I think the show takes, a good jump in, the quality of its writing after Hiro gets in the robot, because it starts focusing on characters that aren't Hiro, and even now that we're going back to, at least with this current arc, we're going back to the relationship between Hiro and 02, we get to find out, a bit more about who they are, and how they're trying to, get closer to each other and all that, and apparently, at least from the last week's episode, Hiro seems to remember that he might have met 02 as a child, but something happened to make him forget. And also that the reason why they can pilot the things is because they have Klaxosaur blood in them?
Oh. Right, because those are the villains, right? Those are the kaiju?
Yeah, they are. And there is a very notable graph from the last episode which had the words dino size on it, and it was a rating of how close they were to dino sizing.
I can't believe they all have dino DNA.
Me either.
That's right, dino DNA.
But yeah, I think the show's, going to go into an interesting direction with, it's not like 02 is directly leading these kids on a rebellion against their weird society. I feel like it's going to become more natural to them because they're becoming more aware about the world, and I think that's what Dr. FranXX wants these kids to do, to kind of, reinvigorate their stagnant society because of, how sterile everything seems to be outside of their little home. There's an episode where Zorome gets lost in the city that's outside of their little home, and it's really sterile, and, the quote-unquote adults live together, but they don't have, the same sort of close relationships that our main cast has.
Okay.
I think it's all of the characters growing, not just 02 leads, everyone else follows. It's everyone growing up together and becoming adults in not the way they'd expect.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's definitely hard to say with just early episodes. It seems like it is growing into sort of a fuller story, as it were. But yeah, it's definitely one that, it's a little rocky in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with the show having a bad first impression.
And so, yeah, I don't know if I'd go back to it, but I'm happy to hear that it's developing into something a little more palatable, a little more interesting.
Yeah, it's still horny in places, but I think it's got some good story underneath that stuff.
Okay. And like, even what I assumed was the story, which you've said isn't quite correct, there's still a potential there, but I think that, like, just early on, again, it's the way that they treat the sexuality of these characters that's very off-putting in the beginning.
Yeah, like, again, I think it has a rough start, because it still had, like, the most weirdly wholesome beach episode I've ever seen in an anime.
Ugh.
Like, it saved all the weirdly leering shots for the ending credits.
Huh. Alright, I'm glad that it seems to be going somewhere, right? That it's not just, like, dead in the water sort of thing.
Yeah, it definitely seems to have a direction, and I'm really curious as to where it's going to go in this second half of the season, because it, like I said, it's revealed that, 02 has some problems. Some real trust issues with people, and I kind of want to see Hero and 02, overcome those and, I want to see 02 not, be, a giant mess.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I do want to ask before we move on is sort of like, the one thing that really stood out to me is the general lack of, like, 3D animation. A lot of it, like, all the mechs are 2D, and I think the Klaxosaurs were as well. Is that still, like, holding up? Does it feel like it's running into production such that they use 3D models, or is it pretty good about that right now?
It has stayed true to being 2D mecha animation, which I feel like that's pretty consistent with the last mecha show that I saw with this mecha character designer, Star Driver, which had the same sort of designs, and it stayed with 2D animation the whole time as well.
Alright, awesome. I mean, it makes a lot of sense given that, like, the robots are basically people. Just giant robotic people.
Yeah, it's kind of distracting how much the main robot looks like the main robot of Star Driver, Talburn.
Sometimes you just really get into a particular design, you can't let it go. That's alright. So next one on here is one that I think secretly is a split core, that we didn't see coming, and that's Fate Extra Last Encore.
Yeah, so Fate Extra Last Encore is sort of a retelling. Well, no. It's sort of an alternate take on Fate Extra. So, a bit of a primer. Fate Extra is a spin-off series of Fate Stay Night, where that follows an alternate universe, where essentially, the world was almost ended, and the natural magic ley lines of the world can no longer function, so people can't use magic that way anymore. So instead, people have gone into the cyber world to do magic, and they are called wizards, and the moon is a giant computer, and that's where the Holy Grail War is held.
Alright.
Yeah, okay, so our story takes place inside the Moon Cell, which is a giant alien computer that just seems to be observing humanity, and it takes the souls of 108 people up to the moon for them to fight it out by summoning servants, which are various mythological figures, or historical ones, and they fight it out, and the winner gains one wish. But this is an alternate take on this, which is, in Fate Extra, it is essentially, what if the main character lost the final boss battle? What would happen after that? And the answer is nothing good. So, the Fate Extra follows Haku no Kishinami as he struggles to survive and somehow ends up into a contract with Nero, who is, of course, a girl, because this is Fate.
Right, this is Red Saber, right?
Yes, that is Red Saber. Okay. Not to be confused with Saber of Red from Apocrypha.
Christ. Alright. But yeah, this is the... Okay. Yeah, I remember who this one is. This is the one that goes Umu all the time.
Yes, she's great because she is overly theatrical about everything, and it's great. Also, fun fact, she's voiced by Cardcaptor Sakura.
Oh, sick! Oh, you did talk about that because you thought it'd be weird if you watched Cardcaptor Sakura. I remember that now. Awesome.
Yeah. So it involves the two of them struggling through this other Holy Grail war that's taking place, and all of the opponents that they face are the same opponents that you fight in the game, but because this is an alternate timeline, it kind of twists around like what they've been doing ever since the Holy Grail War that the previous main character lost, and it even plays around with the idea of the main character having a different identity, so to speak, than the previous Hakuno, who is the protagonist of Fate Extra, and I think it's a pretty interesting series. It's very... Shaft did a really great job animating this, and it does a lot of the same tricks that they pulled off a lot more in non-March Comes Like a Lion shows.
Mm-hmm. I did notice that it is very stylized in a way that, like, it's very distinct from, like, the UFO-table stuff that came before it, right? Where that has sort of been, like, I think canonized as, like, the style that they follow along with. And you can see that in sort of, like, Apocrypha. This goes for a very different look to it.
Yeah, and I feel that works really well, because the Extra series has, like, the same art person for them, Wada Arco, who... She does the art for, like, all of the Fate Extra games, and I feel like this is fairly consistent with her art style, and also, like, they do a lot of really interesting visual tricks as well, like, for an episode pair, you watched Madoka, right?
I've seen parts of it, but I have not watched it in full, but...
I mean, at least you know what, like, the art style of the witches' domains look like, yeah?
Yeah, like, kind of that pop art sort of thing.
Yeah, they had that for an entire episode pair for, like, the backgrounds, and it looked really good.
I mean, this is Akiyuki Shinbo, right? He's got his bag of tricks.
I don't know if it's Shinbo directing.
I believe it is.
Huh, it doesn't seem to say. Oh wait, it's Shinbo and someone else.
Okay, so he's like... Oh, I see, so he's like, he's doing, like, halvesies, okay.
Yeah.
But still, I think that is a very Shinbo thing.
Yeah, it is, and it also has, like, a unique art style that they go for when Nero is giving her backstory about herself, and it all, like, manages to nail its visuals very, very well. But the show itself seems to be going into, like, theme-wise, it goes to going into, like, the value of life and what life is and how it needs to survive and all that sort of stuff, but unfortunately, the show is unfinished at the moment, so I can't really give any complete clarifications about it quite yet.
Okay. But you are saying it is distinct from the game. So
yeah.
Those who maybe are familiar with Fate Extra still have something to get out of this story.
Yeah, it definitely twists around a lot of things that you'd expect, and it does a lot of different stuff that I like with the characters that you do know from the show, and I kind of like that it gives you an additional side to these characters that you didn't get from the game.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a very enjoyable watch for me right now, and I do hope that whenever it returns, it seems to be summer, that it does manage to stick its landing.
Okay, cool. Because it's coming back in July, right? So it's coming back for summer?
Yes, but I'm still not sure if it's, like, just going to pull out the last 3 episodes or if it's going to be a full-on second core.
Okay, because I think it's currently labeled as, like, a second core. So I don't know if maybe they'll do, like, what is it, CCC, the sequel?
Pseudo-sequel.
Or side thing, the other Fate Extra thing?
Yes.
Okay. And since you said it is a little more like old Shaft, how's the head tilt? How many head tilts?
Quite a few. I think there's at least one an episode.
Phew, buddy. Thank God. All right. Good to know. Yeah, it does. Yeah. I really do like the style from what I've seen. Like, again, very distinct from other sort of Fate styles in a way that's like, it still is distinctly type Moon, but like, it has a much... It's even, like, cuter, I think. I think it has, like, a cute angle to it.
Yeah, having seen a lot of what Wada Arco's art, I feel like that's definitely her thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, I also didn't mention this, but I think Nero and Hakuno play off pretty well off of each other. They're a good pair of main characters who work pretty well together.
All right, cool. Glad to hear, and hopefully when it comes back, it'll be just as good.
Yeah, I hope so.
Is Shaft doing anything in between then?
I don't think so. I think they're off this season.
All right, so yeah, maybe they're planning something big, or I don't know, preparing for something else. I don't know what kind of plans they have going past this, because I think they're all caught up with the Monogatari stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
I wonder if the reason why it's incomplete is the reason why, like, Netflix hasn't announced anything about this show at all.
Yeah, maybe they're just waiting for it to be done at this point then. Or it's building up to something. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But it's cool to hear that it's, is doing something neat.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Now let's get a little weird. Let's talk about Pop Team Epic.
Can you really talk about Pop Team Epic?
Pop Team Epic is easily one of the shows we watched last season. And, I feel weird about it because it's the farther I am away from having watched Pop Team Epic, I know I enjoyed my time with it, but I wonder how much of that would, hold up on a second viewing now that sort of the shock value is gone. It's very hit or miss, I think, a lot of sort of comedic shows. And part of that is because it's 5 different teams basically sending in their own shorts with their own idea of what Pop Team Epic is.
Yeah.
And so, some parts of it really funny, and some parts of it kind of land flat, and it's sort of all over the place which ones it's going to be from week to week. But I think as a whole, it has done things that, if nothing else, I'm glad happened. I'm really glad this exists, because no other show or sets of situations could possibly lead to this existing.
Yeah, the production story of Pop Team Epic is some wild stuff.
Right, this is basically done as more or less cashing in favors for the director who wanted to put this together. And then it's 5 different teams who are all sending in different shorts. B-Cub is going through and making sure all of these things are approved. It's wild, I think that's the best word for it, is you don't ever know what to expect from Pop Team Epic. And I think that's the best thing about it, is that it is unpredictable.
Yes, this show is extremely unpredictable. And sometimes it really gets you.
Yeah, so it's hard to talk about because it is skit oriented. We could talk about our favorite skits, and maybe we will do that a bit, but it's some of these shorts are made for anime, and it makes sense because sort of the 4-coma sort of style that Pop Team Epic lives off of wouldn't work if it was just rapid fire.
Yeah.
And they do try to change jokes for the sake of being animated. There's the 4-coma where they get fan mail, and it says oh, I hate that B-Cup keeps doing this copy-paste style, this joke isn't funny. And so the entire 4-coma is just made out of copy-pasted elements, including being able to see when he zooms in on something and it gets all fucked up, and so that gets changed into 2 different jokes, actually. One which is I hate that this is all based on references, followed up by a reference to Prepara. And then one where it makes fun of the fact that the Bob and Emiya shorts, or I guess I'll call it Bob Team Epic from now on, those shorts have very little animation. And so it's disgustingly animated for the last bit of it as they do a stupid dance. They get a lot of mileage out of the Eisai Harumasakoi dance joke.
Yeah, they do. They did do that 3 times.
Yeah, because they did it the first time with Bob Team Epic, which I think was the best one, because it's just, the dance is just doing Blanca moves from Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, that rules.
And then there was the second one, which was the opening for one of them, where it's just screaming the words over and over while doing the chicken dance to a techno remix. And then the last one, which is that disgustingly animated dance that they do in reference to the fan mail they get.
Bless you, Akabu. You are truly the saviors of anime.
Yeah, so Akabu is, like, I think the highlight of this team, of the teams that are doing this, because they're known for doing a lot of sort of weird, quirky, like, commercials before this. And so what they've done here is that apparently what happens is the director will just receive a tape of their bits for Pop Team Epic, and then they just won't look at them. They'll just air them as is, like no sort of like quality check or anything.
They just appear finished.
Right, and Akabu also did the classic Galo Sengen music video, if you're familiar with that. And so they definitely have the most free reign of them all. And I think that culminates in their Hellshake Yano bit, which is basically just two people telling a story through like more or less a flip book, but like this really well put together sort of like flip book gag for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's incredible to see in motion. It's art.
Yeah, it is genuinely art, because it's sort of like they tell the story of like this guitarist, I think that goes by Hellshake Yano, and basically they have this notebook of paper and they keep flipping the pages up and it sort of builds upon previous pages as like a story develops, and it's a lot of fun. Like I really enjoyed that most of all. Like, again, it's the unpredictability of Pop Team Epic that makes it enjoyable to watch.
Oh yeah, I think we should mention, like, one of the big gimmicks of the show.
Right. So Pop Team Epic also, the thing that they do is they air effectively the same episode twice in one 24-minute period. So it's 2 12-minute episodes. The first one being voiced by a group of, like, female voice actresses, followed by the same content being voiced by male actors.
Yeah.
And so it's not like 1-to-1 perfect. Like, you're not watching the same thing again each time. Like, there are a lot of, according to the thing, it's like, there are a lot of improv bits in there where they just put them in the studio and it's like, yeah, just make some shit up. We're really sorry. We don't have anything to tell you. And that definitely comes across because, like, you can tell that some of them are more prepared to make jokes, and some of them absolutely aren't. Like the guy who, for that entire bit, was just like, Marilyn Monroe, and would just keep doing that. Like, you can tell that there's... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's because that's Yu Kobayashi doing that voice, because I think she's a character.
Sure, okay. But it's definitely, like, you can tell that there's, like, some comfortability with that between the different characters, especially, like, in episode 2 where they did the live-action bit with the voice actors in the studio.
Yeah.
It's also heavily referential, so, like, some of your enjoyment is going to be decided on whether or not you catch the references, or, you know, find absurdity funny regardless of that.
Yeah, you have to be extremely online sometimes to find the show funny.
And it has, like, some voice actor jokes where it sort of, like, plays with the fact that they got these particular duos in to do stuff. Like, they got Norio Wakamoto to do it for the sake of, like, I think that was the M. Bison episode?
Yes, that was the M. Bison episode.
Right, which I think he also voices, and they have, like, pretty iconic duos do it. Like, I know they had, Mio and Ritsu from K-On! For one of them, and they've had other, like, duos who are pretty popular together, like, in different roles. But yeah, Pop Team Epic is basically indescribable, and while it is hit and miss, it's like, I think it's definitely worth some watching. Even if you don't watch it both times, I think it's worth looking at from an angle of, like, how this got made and the production behind it. And, like, this is definitely a good choice for, like, I think, younger kids as well, because without the referential knowledge, this comes off as just, like, random humor. And for a specific audience, like a specific age, random will always be funny. And so, like, there are multiple levels with which this can be enjoyed upon. And I think that's something worth looking at.
Yeah, it's a show that kind of is all over the place with its jokes, and sometimes they land and sometimes they don't, but a couple of things that I want to throw out, because I've also been watching the dub of this show.
Mm-hmm. And the dub also follows the changing voice actors every episode thing.
Yeah, it does. But one of the things I've noticed about the dub is that the dub does not ad-lib at all. It's just directly the Japanese script for the most part, I think.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like the Marilyn Monroe bit was the exact same in English.
That's a little weird, but I think with the schedule that they have on, it might be a little weird to be like, hey, can you just improv this bit 40 times or whatever so we can pick the best one?
Yeah. And then the other thing about this is with the Bob Epic Team bits, because in Japan, it's the two guys from Akabu doing the voices, but in the dub, it's two professional voice actors doing it. So, ironically, they're the most consistent members of the cast.
Cool. Well, because the only thing that ever really changed about the Bob Team Epic stuff is the one time they did the Hell Shake You Know bit, they just dubbed over each other. Like, that's the only...
Yeah, that ruled. But I say this because one of the two for the Bob Epic Team bits in the dub is Ian Sinclair, and he is a fucking treat every single time.
I mean, Ian Sinclair is just good at voices, right? He's like one of the higher quality dudes there at Funimation, I think.
Yeah, he's Space Dandy. He's real good.
He's Space Dandy, and he's the skeleton guy from One Piece, and he's got a lot of other stuff too that has like a range to him.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I want to mention is, even if you don't like watching the second half of each episode, you need to watch it for the final one.
Yeah, the final one, it's important. For sure, because, like, it actually has a story between the two halves. There's, like, a bad end and good end sort of thing.
Yeah. Another thing that you learn from this show is that, Bakub likes idol shows.
Oh, B-Cub loves idols. B-Cub loves Pre-Para. B-Cub might love Aikatsu. He definitely loves Pre-Para. And he loves, like, weird references to, like, Western media, too, like, when they're doing the skeleton race and, Muttley and, Dastardly show up in the race as, like, a wacky races sort of thing.
Also, they're blurred out.
Well, of course they're blurred out. They don't want to pay rights for that.
Yeah, but also, they shout Cool Runnings because it's a reference to hit movie Cool Runnings.
Yep, they just... one thing I really appreciate is that all of the references just got, all of the references just got in the subtitles for the High Dive release. So they're like, yeah, there's a reference to this, there's a reference to this. I don't think Crunchyroll did the same thing.
What, that High Dive actually mentioned what the references were?
Yeah, High Dive constantly would do that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was wild. It's definitely an experience that will not be replicated by any show except for maybe Pop Team Epic Season 2. And I wonder what they would do with that, because that's got announced. I mean, sort of. They announced Hoshiro Girl Drop Season 2. I assume that's Pop Team Epic Season 2.
Does it really? Can you really be sure?
No, but I don't know what they'd do with the second season, also.
Well, they'd have to finally do the hamburger gag.
I guess so. But yeah, I don't know. I still enjoyed my time, and, like, there are definitely bits to see there. It's definitely, like, a weird hit or miss sort of, like, in it, you're in it or you're not sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing to get from it. Like, we're giving it a lot more artistic credit than I think B-Cub would, or anyone who's working on it would.
It's one of the most high-quality shitposts I've ever watched, and I think that says everything you need to know about this show. Do you want to watch a really high-quality shitpost? Then you should probably watch Pop Team Epic.
Yeah, I think, if nothing else, it's worth seeing through for, like, I don't know, an episode or two, just to see the craft that's being put into it.
Yeah.
Like how they got, so at one of the 3D studio that they got to do Pop Team Epic, they also had a guy there who is French and doesn't speak any Japanese. So what they did is they just got him to read Pop Team Epic in Japanese and just kind of guess at what was happening and then make sure it's based off of it. And that's really charming because he talks about, like, the influence that he has from it and sort of the experiences he has that develop in his Pop Team Epic shorts in, like, interviews before they air. And I think that's really cute.
Yeah, like, these are definitely a different sort of a joke. They are definitely his own sort of humor to it, and I think that just sort of adds to the general weirdness of the show.
Right. It is nothing if not weird, and I think that's the thing. But yeah, that's Pop Team Epic, man. Like, I guess watch it, or don't. I don't know. I have no idea anymore.
Pop Team Epic is extremely a show.
It certainly is. To follow up on that, and something a lot more typical is I watched Laid Back Camp, which was a very nice sort of slice of life thing. It was very comfortable. It had like good moments of humor, and just like overall, it's a very well produced, cute girls doing cute things sort of show. So to give a very succinct summary of the show, Laid Back Camp is just about a group of 4 girls who end up bonding in high school over their love of outdoors camping. It very much follows that formula, but I do think it succeeds very well in what it does. Where the characters are all distinct, their designs are nice, and it also, like, does talk about camping and the things you have to do when you camp and sort of these, things to avoid, things to do. It has a love of both its characters and the content that it's actually delivering, which is nice.
Yeah, I've heard Laid Back Camp was really good.
Yeah, this and A Place Further Than the Universe both ended up being like really high quality sort of like slice of life stuff.
Huh, I didn't think that A Place Further Than the Universe was slice of life.
I mean, it sort of is, in that it's about, like, 4 girls trying to figure out how to get to Antarctica. Like, I think they only get to Antarctica in the last couple episodes. So it's a lot of sort of, like, antics before that, from what I understand. I didn't watch it myself, but, like, both of those ended up being sort of, like, I think surprising takes on sort of this, like, group of girls do things together sort of genre. And, like, there's not a lot to say about Back Camp. It accomplishes what it wants to do very well. And in a way that sort of, like, is very cozy. Like, the music is very, like, brings you in. It's very casual and, like, it's sort of easy to listen to. Like, there's nothing about it that's, like, abrasive or really makes you jump or anything. It's just a lot of fun in the way that these characters interact with each other and sort of, like, try to accomplish things together. And there are, like, some genuinely funny bits in there, and sort of, like, at one point they're trying to figure out how to, because camping equipment is so expensive, they're trying to figure out how to cheap out on it, and so they're trying to figure out solutions to, like, not buying really nice sleeping bags. So it's like, oh, what if we wrapped you in a blanket? Well, that's still cold. Well, what if we then wrapped you in tinfoil, and sort of, like, building up this until it's like, oh, well, now it's kind of warm. It's like, well, now what do I do when I need to go to the bathroom? And they kind of just flounder there. And so, like, there are cute moments to it. Again, the comedy's nice. It's inoffensive. Just everything about the show is very charming and aesthetically pleasing, and it's got a really good OP that's basically just I Want You Back by the Jackson 5.
Holy shit!
Like, same sort of, like, funk style, same sort of, like, instrumentation. It's, like, surprising how much it just sounds like that song. But it's a banger. I really enjoy just everything aesthetically about this show. And it's kind of fascinating because it comes from a studio that, like, otherwise doesn't have much of a place in that. Like, they sort of did, like, a titty light novel show before this, and, like, a boy idol thing. Like, they seem to be able to capture the mood well, despite being a very, like, new studio with not a lot of history behind it. So it turned out really well, and I'm happy for what it was.
Nice.
Yeah. So then we have another comedy of the season that you watch, and that's Teasing Master Tagaki? Tagaki. All right.
So Teasing Master Tagaki is also more or less a slice of life show, and it's about these 2 middle school kids, Nishikata, the boy, and Tagaki, the girl, and Tagaki enjoys teasing Nishikata, and Nishikata tries to get back at him, and his attempts usually blow up in his face. And it's all very, like, cutesy middle school romance sort of stuff that's, it's a nice and fluffy show that slowly shows that, these 2 characters forming an actual relationship beyond the teasing, because sometimes Nishikata just kind of misses the point and Tagaki just kind of wants to hang out with him. And it's really cute.
Okay. Okay, so that does seem pretty nice. Like, it seems cute, and what I've heard about it is that it is, like, pretty genuinely funny.
Yeah, it definitely got, like, quite a few laughs out of me for, like, a lot of different jokes. It manages to pull off its comedy pretty well with Nishikata overreacting a whole lot to everything, and it helps that he's voiced by Yuji Kaiji.
Oh, okay, so yeah. Definitely got the chops for that.
Yeah, and it's also got, like, a couple minor characters as well, and, you know, they get developed a little bit, but it's mostly about, like, the relationship between these two and their back and forth with each other, and it's really fun. It's nicely animated, well scored, and it's just a fun little anime to watch that I decided to throw on.
Alright, cool. Glad that turned out well, then.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I have complaint-wise is, like, this anime feels like it should have been, like, a 12-minute anime, because sometimes the episodes drag on a bit, because it's the same sort of fluff for 24 minutes.
Sure, I can get that. There are definitely shows that, like, feel like they make more sense for smaller doses.
Yeah.
Okay. And as we enter the section of drop shows, I feel kind of the same way about Mitsuboshi Colors. So I gave Mitsuboshi Colors a shot just because it was readily available, and I still wanted to know the idea behind these 3 young girls pointing a bazooka at a cop. And it turns out that got answered in the first episode. Basically, they decided this cop has been too corrupt and not helping the people around the area, so they've decided to shoot him with a toy bazooka.
That's fair.
And by the end of it, they do shoot him in the balls with a toy bazooka.
That's fair.
Can't believe they killed a cop. But you know what? He probably deserved it. It's fine. But so, Mitsuboshi Colors is about 3 young girls who just spend their time, like, in their clubhouse playing games and sort of, like, doing kid adventures in trying to help out the town that they live in. Like, you know, if they notice a problem or something, they try to solve it. And so, like, it's very cute in a way that sort of, like, just kids doing things is cute. Like, the misinterpretations that they have and the way that they play with each other and sort of, like, interact is very charming in a way that, like, I think does capture sort of, like, kids very well in a way that anime sometimes doesn't. But it's the sort of thing where, like, by the 3rd episode, I felt like I had sort of gotten everything I wanted out of the show already, because it is very much like the same sort of story and humor each time that it's telling. So while I didn't finish it, I still think it's a perfectly good show for what it's trying to do. And it has a lot of, like, fun characters to it. But yeah, it's just like each episode being 24 minutes. Maybe if it were shorter, I would enjoy it more just because it would be it'd be less time spent each week with the characters. But I definitely felt like not really burned out, but satisfied by, like, episode 3.
Did you notice, like, the characters changing or, like, even slightly during any of this?
Not really. They're basically the same throughout the whole thing. So that might be part of it, too.
Okay, yeah, because, like I said with Tagaki, the 2 at least Nishikata does change a little bit throughout, like, the whole show. Like, it's a gradual sort of thing that he does, and it was nice seeing him, like, him actually grow closer to Tagaki, and their, like, the dynamic of their relationship got closer, and it was nice to see that. So, just as a contrast between this and Mitsuboshi Colors.
Yeah, sure. Then you dropped Hakata Tonkotsu Ramens. So tell me a little bit about what happened there.
Alright, so Hakata Tonkotsu Ramens is about a whole bunch of assassins living in a city full of assassins, and there's some, like, political intrigue there, but some of the assassins work for Red Rum Inc., which is literally a cover for Murder Inc., a company of assassins, which is really ridiculous and funny.
Murder Inc.'s a good name.
Yeah, and I wish this show wasn't, like, the bad kind of edgy, instead of being, like, the fun kind of edgy. Yeah, like, I got this feeling when the second episode is, we have to show our villain is evil because they have sex with women and then kill them afterward. And
Yikes.
no. Also, one of the main characters is a cross-dressing assassin for some reason. And, I was gonna say the subtitles use a slur in the first episode. Also, no.
Ooh, yikes. Yeah, that's always the thing. So here's the thing with cross-dressing characters, right? Either it's this, like, sort of idealized state where, like, no one gives a shit, like Astolfo, maybe, from Fate, that kind of thing. or it comes with this horrible baggage.
I mean, nobody else seemed to care, but also someone used a slur, so
Right.
still bad.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the thing, right? Is like, either it comes with that sort of baggage where it's like, oh, haha, or it's like an idealized version that like is like fine, but it's still like this weird interpretation of, you know, like people as a whole.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunate, because I've had shows like that before. Like, I don't know, I was kind of enjoying like Nanana's Buried Treasure before, and that's like just sort of like solving mysteries and finding treasure with a bunch of like modern day like teens, but it also like inexplicably has a character who's like, oh, this is a guy who cross-dresses a girl, and we're going to use language here that's like inappropriate, and so it's like, yikes.
Yeah.
And I know that Japan has this very different sort of like look at, you know, like trans characters or, you know, cross-dressing characters. That's like its whole other thing. But like, they definitely still don't have like, they still haven't moved on from the guy in a dress is funny sort of thing in a lot of ways.
I mean, you brought up Astolfo, and I think one of the reasons that Astolfo works as a character is because Astolfo is a complete goofball who is funny for reasons other than, haha, man in dress.
Right, and no one seems to care, right? Like, the point is that they don't bring attention to it, no one cares, and so, like, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That sucks, because City of Assassins detectiving other assassins seemed like an alright idea for a show, especially if they're working somewhere called Murder Inc.
Yep.
And then the last drop show here is Violet Evergarden. And like, Violet Evergarden, I think for its budget and everything, and the fact that it's on Netflix, makes it the best looking show, or maybe media, that KyoAni has produced. Like, I think it costs like $1 million for every single fucking frame of that show. Because when it comes to Violet's robotic hand, it is accurately lit, you know, as far as the lighting goes and everything, and it reflects and all of this. It's like absurdly beautiful.
Wow, that is definitely something to say.
Right, like, I think Sound Euphonium has a bit of that because they're drawing all of these metal instruments that people are playing, but like, it comes across so much clearer because it's like on Netflix, where like there isn't really like a bitrate thing, you know, like it's not a TV broadcast or something. So it is just like, it is like the best quality you could get out of it. It is beautiful. But it's also just sort of a boring show.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Like, Violet Evergarden, I think, is just like kind of a boring show because it, certainly for the first few episodes, it seems to sort of like continually do the same story about the fact that Violet, as like a child soldier, doesn't know how to interact with other people and doesn't have any subtlety or anything. So when she speaks to people, she is blunt and direct in a way that is sometimes offensive and sometimes just like honest in a way that goes against what they're trying to do, because Violet ends up working for this postal service basically to, I think it's like, it's basically their job is to transcribe people's thoughts and feelings into a letter in a way that they wouldn't be able to do as far as like, you know, wordsmithing kind of stuff. And so she keeps fumbling and messing up in a ways that's like, she's too blunt and direct and can't seem to get the idea of sort of context and things like that. And they do that multiple times in a way that does develop her character, but still feels very repetitive. And at the time that I dropped it, like, it has a little sort of weird thing about like age politics and romance, where like the episode 4 focuses on sort of the story of, I think it's like a 14-year-old and like a 22-year-old who fell in love like 4 years earlier, and sort of like, oh, you know, age is just a number, it doesn't define feelings or anything, in a way that's like really weird. And those numbers aren't like, I don't exactly know the numbers, but I don't think they're too far off, where it's definitely like someone who's underage and someone who is above legal age. And again, that they've been in love for multiple years and sort of like trying to fight against that. So it's a little weird in that case. And then it doesn't help that sort of like, so there's Violet, and Violet as a child soldier was underneath this guy named Gilbert, who throughout the story, we kind of figure out that he like was madly in love with Violet again, who was underage and sort of like has a weird relationship with her because he's sort of the person who made her into a child soldier. So like, there's a lot of just weird stuff to that story that I wasn't quite comfortable with. And that, along with sort of the pacing, just kind of killed it for me.
Huh.
Which is a shame, because I hear that, like, it tells better stories going forward. Like, sort of, it has that Kyoani thing where it tells a lot of anime-only sort of stuff and sort of, like, tweaks things to make it more like, oh, the anime is distinct from the light novel. So I don't know how much of that is indicative of the source. But yeah, I personally, like, just couldn't really get into the anime. But, like, it has a neat idea, I guess, you know, because this is the first thing in a while where it's like, this has a real, like, plot to it. It's sort of about Violet, who is brought up as a child soldier and loses her arms in what's called the Great War. And after getting them replaced with robotic arms, sort of has to reintegrate into society, and just she can't. Like, as far as she has been, as far as she can remember, she's always been a soldier, so everything she treats like war. She expects to go out again and fight. She expects to see her commander again because she doesn't know that he's died. And like, it's her sort of like, you know, as like kind of a robotic person learning how to be human and interact with others and sort of relate in a way that's like, it's an interesting idea, but overall, I just don't think it stuck that landing.
Yeah, that sounds like it could have been a pretty interesting tale.
Yeah, and maybe the back half that I missed does make it better, but it's definitely a rough start for that. Again, absolutely gorgeous though. It's definitely like one of Kyoani's best looking things that they've done. So now we're out of that, and let's talk about a show we both watched, we both finished, both really liked. March Comes In Like a Lion, Season 2.
Yeah, speaking of gorgeous anime.
Yeah, Shaft definitely does something different with March Comes In Like a Lion than a lot of their typical stuff in a way that's like, it has a very distinct style to it that I like a lot. And it really shines in the way that it does sort of its like metaphor stuff, which we've definitely talked about on this show before. Like, the way it handles visual metaphors is stunning.
Yeah, it manages to be incredible at evoking the emotions that the characters are feeling at that particular moment, and maybe trying to get you, the viewer, to feel those same emotions.
Mm-hmm. So the last time we got in here was sort of the temporary end to the bullying arc with Hinata.
Was it?
I think it was. I think that's where we ended, was sort of the end of that. Or at least near the end of it.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Because I think there was a bit more sort of like trying to get to the conclusion as her bully is sort of like interrogated by the teacher and tried to come to an understanding, and sort of the inability for her to understand why what she did was bad for whatever reason, whether it's because of her parents or her, you know, or just a lack of empathy. You know, that sort of thing is built upon and eventually gets developed right at the very end as we sort of return to the story of the sisters' family, the Kawamotos.
Right, yeah, we definitely ended around there.
Yeah, so the big things that happened in between are we have the match between Rei and Toji, the Grandmaster of Shogi, as it were.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his name myself.
Yeah, so it's Toji Soya.
Right.
Then we had the break for the Olympics. We had the match between Rei's teacher Shimada and the old man who fought against him. I can't think of his name right now. And then we had the follow-up arc for the Kawamotos.
Matsunaga?
That sounds about right. So it's Matsunaga and Shimada who face off in the second sort of arc of the second half of this second season.
Right. Yeah, it started off with that, the return.
Right. So yeah, that was after the month-long Olympics break. So the first one we have the match between Rei and Soya, who is the Grandmaster of Shogi, because Rei is finally sort of able to overcome some of his insecurities in playing thanks to the encouragement of Nikaido, his best friend, and gets to have this match with, the king. And it ends up not going great. He is outplayed and clearly outclassed by him. But what's more important is sort of that after the match sort of stuff, like the information he learns about Soya and the way that he holds himself and everything that goes along with that, as sort of like giving humanization to this character who is otherwise treated as sort of like otherworldly or sort of above other people, sort of this like ephemeral sort of existence.
Yeah, it gives a bit more depth to this character who you could see as a mirror of Rei as a character. Right,
and sort of like definitely, again, tries to bring him down to earth in sort of like a way. It's like, okay, this isn't just like an impossible sort of like shogi master who doesn't talk to anyone and is above other people. Like, you learn sort of like Soya has dealt with a lot, and he's sort of like isolated again because of his talent. So no one really talks to him. He doesn't have like a lot of friends or anything. And he's also effectively deaf, which you get from some of his interactions and the way that he acts with others. Like, there's a part with Soya where, before his match with Rei, he's like answering interview questions and everything, and you see like an accident happens with him where he ends up getting like wine spilled all over his suit. And as people are asking him if he's okay, you can see that he sort of like enters this mode where he knows that he's still answering questions for an interview. So he gives sort of this canned answer about things that are happening with no notice that they're asking about how he's doing, and sort of, again, sort of breaks the illusion of who he is in a way that's like humanizing to him.
Yeah, I was going to say the other takeaway from this arc that I got is that Rei kind of has gains a desire to play against him again. Like, he found the entire match enjoyable to him. It seemed to be like the first time in a while that he actually had fun playing shogi.
Right, like there's a quiet understanding between the two because they're so soft-spoken and sort of like treated differently than others.
Right.
And so yeah, it's really good, and I think it's a good look at Rei as a character as he sort of like finds a meaning to playing again, because he's been struggling with this since season 1, sort of like why he plays and what interests him, and it seems like he finally has like a goal to reach, which is, I want to face Soya again.
Yeah, it's a nice turning point, I guess, for Rei as a character, because he doesn't feel quite as adrift anymore.
Yeah. So then we have this side match between Matsunaga, who is sort of this new character, along with Rei and Nikaido's teacher Shimada. And I found this a little hard to get into only because there had been a month-long break before that because of the Olympics. So it was hard getting back into it as sort of like, I wanted to see Rei and the other characters again, but we get this focus on 2 other characters, which is good. It was a good set of episodes. I think it just sort of like became harder to get through because of it being such a long break and trying to get back into it on this particular arc.
To be fair, this is also a problem that the beginning of this season had, with the show really expecting you to just have watched the previous episode not that long ago.
Right, and like, it's not as hard because it introduces you to its main cast, and this month it's like, well, we're going to this side cast and sort of this new drama with Matsunaga. But it's still good because it's about a character who sort of feels burdened because he's sort of the oldest remaining shogi player from his like generation, and all of these people who have been forced to quit are putting all of these expectations on him to, win this title that he's playing for. Like, because he's won this particular tournament so many times, he's about to earn he's basically about to earn like an eternal title for this particular tournament. And so he has the weight of all of these expectations and other people's dreams on him. And that's sort of like the big metaphor focus that we end up going for.
Yeah, it's a very intense match.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more intense than you'd expect from these two frail characters.
Yeah, two frail characters and one who basically we just met for this match.
I mean, he's been around before, yeah, but this is the first time we've really gotten a good look at him as a character.
Yeah, that's what I mean, is sort of like, this is our first real look at him, and so we're already thrown into sort of his problems and everything, but I think the metaphors and stuff really play best in this match as it plays into his idea of all of these people feeling like they're standing in a burnt field, like there's nothing left for them to harvest, nothing left for them to do within shogi, and the way that he sort of like, you know, carries past with all of these expectations falling upon him and blinding him from his own desires. So it's like it's a lot of really cool imagery being used for this side event.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts of this whole little arc is that after he wins, he goes drinking with the other old character and he's like, "You did this same thing last year."
Yeah, it's the more I step away from where I had to watch it, I appreciate it.
Yeah, like I like that he has this sort of existential crisis every year, and he overcomes it with his burning desire to win, to honor those who came before him, and to, you know, make everybody who came to cheer him on proud.
Right, especially now that he's more or less done and that he's earned an eternal title.
Yeah.
And then we have sort of a follow-up on the Kawamotos and sort of the plot line that we got before with the bullying and everything. We get to meet up again with Hinata's friend Sakura, who is recovering from the bullying that she is dealing with, and sort of like is bittersweet because it's clear that she's doing better, but like her body physically starts to shut down around people of her same age because of the anxiety that she has from the bullying.
I thought her name was Chio.
Is it Chio? Is it Sakura Chio?
It might be.
But yeah, so it's about that, and sort of, you know, and then it's also about Hinata having to grow up because she's moving on from middle school to high school now. And so she has to make choices about her life, and sort of through working with her grandfather and everything, she decides that, you know, she wants to really get into this sweets making business and really, you know, take up sort of the family trade.
I was going to say, there's also the fact that she also feels like she's kind of adrift. She knows, like, she wants to be a pastry chef, but she doesn't really know, like, how to get there. She because of the whole bullying thing, she hasn't really thought about where she wants to go for high school. She hasn't thought about that at all, and what happens next is, like, Ray decides to maybe help and give her a bit of a direction.
Yeah, and we get a little bit of that too, is like a one final follow-up scene with the bully from the earlier arc, and sort of the teacher coming in being like, honestly, it seems like you're a little shit because you don't have anywhere to go, you're adrift, and you're taking it out on people who are more caught up than you are. Kind of like the people you're envious of these people because they have something together about their life, and so you're trying to ruin it for them. And it's like a real shock for the character. Like, it's the first time that they've emoted in any way that's like shows any sort of like introspection or understanding.
Yeah, that was something.
And so we get Hinata's development as sort of like, I want to be a pastry chef and I'm going to do all these great things, and like I've decided I want to go to high school where Ray's going to, because through all of this troubling stuff, I want to follow Ray. I like him a lot, and I feel comfortable near him. Like, they've sort of built up more familial ties in that direction as well.
Yeah, I think it's very sweet that Hinata tries to go there because she is also scared of being bullied again, and she wants to go where Ray is so that way she knows she has a friend she can count on there.
Right. And then the last episode, like, the thing that really stuck out to me was sort of the extra chapter that they put in, which is this like vignette about Ray meeting up with his adopted mother and just visiting. It's a very like bittersweet sort of thing, as it again gets into the fact that Ray inadvertently sort of divided the household that he came into.
Yeah.
Through no fault of his own, he ended up kind of tearing this family apart because of the fact that his adopted father became so focused on him because he was the only one who showed real signs of being a shogi prodigy. And that turned sort of everyone against him and really, like, made the household go to hell. But, you know, this adoptive mother still really cares about him, hopes he's doing well, and, like, it, you know, knows that she can't really do anything about it, but, like, is happy to know that Ray's doing okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think one of the most striking parts about this whole chapter is how minimalist it's animated.
Right, like, there's very little animation. In fact, it's mostly stills, as just sort of, like, it's very stark, and I think that helps the mood in what it's trying to do with sort of bringing us back to this family that has caused Ray so much grief and that has caused this problem. And, like, for a moment, step back and be like, there are still things here that weren't horrible, you know? This mother still really cared about everyone equally, and in some ways kind of wished Ray were a little more like her own kids so that everything would have been okay. But recognizing that that wasn't an option, you know? That always something like this was going to happen, and it just went in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
So it's regretful and bittersweet, but it still, like, gives character to someone that we had never met before in a way that's, like, nice.
Yeah, it's doing a thing that I like this show doing a lot, which is developing its side characters and, you know, caring about them and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked the last bit of March Comes in Like a Lion. Again, it just tells a very layered story about a bunch of characters and has a pretty good idea of how to balance them all together and balance drama with not always comedy, but sort of like more lighthearted moments where the characters just get to be themselves.
Yeah, I noticed that, like, quite a few of the last few episodes were just a couple of days in the life of the Kawamoto sisters, and it was just really pleasant and charming, and just, it was nice to see these characters just, you know, being happy after all the stuff that they've been through.
Yeah, and even as they recognize, oh, we have all these problems that we have to deal with, it's like they're finding solutions to move forward through it. And it seems like everyone sort of, like, has found their own solution, you know, or their own direction to go towards.
Yeah, and the show ended with Hina going off to her first day of school at Ray's high school, and it ended on a pretty high note, I think.
Yeah, even after a very unfortunate haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's honest in a way that's really nice to watch, you know? It deals with so many emotions and the way that they sort of overlap with each other in a hectic kind of environment. And so, yeah, I really liked this season. And hopefully there will be more to go. I don't know how caught up to the manga they are at this point.
Neither do I, honestly.
But it'd be nice to see more, so, you know, here's hoping.
Yeah, I like this show a lot because it's probably one of the most human shows I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It manages to capture the humanity of its characters and convey that humanity to its viewers very well. It's a show that doesn't have any outright villainous characters. Everyone has some sort of pathos and such that drives them.
Yeah, like, the most villainous character is probably Ray's adopted sister. But even then, they do give pathos to, like, it's not her fault that she ended up all fucked up, but it doesn't treat her as, like, a whole villain, even though she is in direct sort of opposition to Ray.
Yeah.
Well, so we got 3 more, and the next 2 are ones that you watched. First off, being Garo Vanishing Line, which ended, right?
Yes, it did end.
So tell me how that turned out.
Alright, so the second half of Garo Vanishing Line started off with a bit more, sort of Monster of the Week sort of shows with our protagonists Sword, Sophie, Gina, and Luke heading off to find the city of El Dorado, which is where the bad guys have their base. And it had some really nice character moments for all of our characters. Luke got 2 episodes that showed how he has grown. We get a nice episode of Sophie showing, like, how she's growing and changing and how she's still a 13-year-old kid who's suddenly got thrown into this whole mess. And we also get a bit of insight into Sword's past about what happened to the person he cared about and how it sort of shaped him. We get a lot of implied character development for him. He's not just a big beefy musclehead, he's got a strong pathos that's driving him.
He's more than just his name, Sword.
Yeah, so we eventually make it to El Dorado, where our protagonists fight against the villains, and there is a twist in the show that I kind of don't want to spoil, because I like the show a lot, and I really want people to watch it, but there is a twist during this last bit of the show that is both highly telegraphed, but also goes in a different direction than you'd expect, and I really like that plot twist. And it manages to come together to tell a story about, like, how even after tragedy, humanity has the capability to overcome that tragedy and come back even stronger, because 3 of our 4 main characters, Sword, Sophie, and Luke, all have had horrible things happen to them, but they've continued to move on and grow, and that trauma has helped them become sort of stronger people overall. And it manages to do that pretty well, I think.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it also manages to have some nice fight scenes, as few as they are. It manages to have some nice fight scenes, some nice moral victories for our characters.
Right, as you'd hope from sort of the type of show that it is.
Yeah, and it managed to stick its landing. It managed to give everybody a nice, good ending for the show, which is honestly one of the things I hope for the most from Toku series, is that a couple of Toku series that I've watched have had trouble sticking the landing, and I'm really glad that this one managed to do so.
Mm-hmm.
It's a show that I really liked a lot, that it's a good, shorter Toku story. It's only 24 episodes compared to the 48 that most longer-running Toku shows are, and it manages to tell a decent story. One could say a more mature one, sometimes. But I really enjoyed Garo Vanishing line a lot, and I'm kind of sad that I don't think a lot of other people have talked about it, and I kind of want people to watch it more. It's a really good story.
Yeah, I haven't heard a ton about it, but some of it's like, it's definitely a little pulpier, but like, it has more high points than low and tells a story that has a good ending to it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like big, goofy, goofball Sword. Our characters have really good chemistry together, and it's pretty good. And also, even though the titular Garo is all in CG, it manages to have, pretty nice CG for the fights that it's used. I don't know. I don't have much to say about it. It's a really good show, and I liked it.
All right, awesome. And then the other one is the monthly series, so 1 episode at the start of every month, I believe, and that is today's menu for the Emiya family.
Yes, and I like to call it What's Cooking at the Emiyas, because that's a lot snappier.
So this is a Fate spin-off where instead of fighting and stuff, they just like make food and eat?
It's basically supposed to be set after the whole events of Fate's Day Night and from an indeterminate point, but it's just all of the characters of Fate's Day Night getting together, and Shiru makes everybody nice meals, and it's really nice to see these characters happy and not murdering each other or dying in horrible ways.
Sure.
It's not really a very, I don't really have a lot to say about it. It's just a nice, pleasant, slice-of-lifey show to watch. It's only half length.
Oh, okay.
But it's all animated very well, and the food looks really, really good, which is what you'd hope for from a cooking show. And it's just nice to see these characters happy.
How's the actual cooking in it? Like, does it teach you how to make the stuff, or is it more sort of like...
Yes, actually. It does.
Awesome.
It teaches you how to make everything in it, even though it's like one recipe an episode. It goes into depth on, making that food, and it all looks really good, so it's a good show to watch when you're hungry.
Or a bad show to watch if you're really hungry.
Yeah.
So, like, what kind of stuff do they make in it?
There's only been 4 episodes. I think Last episode was sandwiches, but they also had, like, a fish dish. They also had, like, a fancy rice dish. The show doesn't air that often, so I don't remember, like, the super specifics about it, but...
Sure.
All of it seemed, like, pretty, not difficult to do?
Okay. That's always nice.
I guess. Maybe I mean, like, the food isn't difficult to acquire. Like, it's something that you could make at home.
Right, they're not making you buy A5 grade Wagyu beef or anything.
Right.
Alright. That's always nice. Like, you have, like, Sweetness and Lightning and Yakatachi Japan and I think Food Wars where, like, they actually spread the recipes that they have and sort of, like, put them in the manga and stuff for people to be able to follow along with, which is really nice as sort of like a, hey, we know this thing is about food and people who are interested in food are going to read this, so let's give them the ability to sort of recreate these dishes.
I mean, this was based on a manga, so I would assume that those recipes are with the manga as well.
Right. So that's cool. That's nice.
Yeah, Ufotable did a great job in making sure this anime is incredibly detailed with its cooking.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's nice that it's only once a month and it's half length. That makes it a lot easier on Ufotable.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then last, but definitely not least, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS, which has just finished its first story arc. And it was alright.
Yeah, it was alright.
It was alright. It's certainly bombastic in its end. It's definitely that great Yu-Gi-Oh! Thing where it's like overcoming impossible odds with the perfect draw of cards that wouldn't be good except in this situation. It's fun. It's fun to watch that sort of thing unfold. The way that they've made comboing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really entertaining to watch in comparison to certainly the earlier stuff where it's sort of like play card pass. But, so the series direction for this show is being done by Shin Yoshida, who has done a number of smaller arcs for other anime, the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. In particular, he did the one big anime filler thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! The original, the Atlantis arc.
He did the Cielvori Calcos?
Yep, that one.
Where Yugi tried to kill a man?
Yeah, that happens a lot. It's crazy. But he did that, and he most notably did the entire series direction for Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. And between Zexal and VRAINS, a pattern has shown, first of all, that he doesn't seem to care a lot about his female characters, and yikes, in the way that Blue Angel was treated. But secondly, that just in general, he seems a lot more interested in his story than he is his characters. It's about the plot and what that means in comparison to the characters that comprise it. And you can see that a lot in the fact that, like, the characters who have developed in Season 1, like Go and Blue Angel, they both die, and they sort of like against sort of what their arcs have developed, they end up losing and they die, and instead we have Playmaker as the main Cypher character who doesn't grow at all and doesn't develop and doesn't have any sort of like real character or growth to him. He's just sort of like an angry dude.
I mean, I think he grew a little bit, considering he shouted, "I'm going to save you from our cursed destiny" in the final duel.
Right, he does show a little bit of sort of like he's pulled away from revenge as his interest. But like, as a character, he's still like sort of a weird loner who won't like just admit that he like enjoyed Ai's company. Or like, it's a weird sort of thing where like, it's so much clearer that other characters have been developed only for him to take the spotlight. And like, Revolver is...
What Revolver is a giant ham and nothing else.
Right, like, he doesn't have a lot of motivation behind him. It's mostly like, oh, my dad told me to kill the AIs because they might turn on us. And then the AIs go, no, we wouldn't. And he's like, shut up. And then he kills them. Or tries to, at least. And so, like, we end up in a very bombastic ending with two characters that, like, there are stakes to it, but, like, not on the character's end. It's solely for the sake of the plot that we're telling.
I was gonna say, I can agree with that, because Yusaku literally tries to go, hey, maybe we could just talk this out. You don't have to do something stupid like blow up the entire internet. And then Revolver shouts, no, we have to duel!
Right, he's like, actually, I'm a bad person. And so that's, like, sort of the end of it.
Yeah, it's really dumb.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's just, like, it's unfortunate because there's plenty of potential there, but it's not with either of these characters that they've built up. Like, I'm really hoping Season 2 gives us a chance to care about Yusaku and develop Go and Aoi.
Yeah, I would hope that now that Yusaku is freed from his chains of revenge, he can start, growing closer to Go and Aoi.
Right, and, like, we can maybe, and, like, Ai's gone, but I assume he'll come back again, like, just for whatever reason. Something crazy is gonna happen. Some kind of cyber conspiracy. I don't know, they're selling faked cards on the deep web or something. But I assume he's gonna come back, but, like, at the end, you almost get the sense that Yusaku's like, dang, I already missed this guy. He was kind of fun to hang around. But
yeah,
there's still so much more that could be there.
Yeah, like, I kinda got the feeling for how the final arc was going to shake out the moment Aoi lost her duel, because it was gonna be like, oh, Aoi lost. That must mean Revolver is gonna beat this guy. Or Yusaku is gonna beat this guy, which also means that Go is clearly going to lose, because that way our main character can save the day, because he's the best.
Yeah, and Spectre sucks. Spectre's a bad villain, and he's bad, and I don't like him.
He's weird and creepy. Go away.
But also, like, it doesn't... His, like, whole thing is supposed to be, like, a contrast to Yusaku, because Yusaku's like, hey, this, like, forced dueling imprisonment fucked up my life and ruined me forever. And Spectre's like, actually, I went through the same thing. It's the only thing that made me feel alive ever, because I fell in love with my mom tree who protected me as a child.
I just got a terrifying realization.
Yeah.
I bet the AI that came from Spectre is gonna be the villain at some point.
Man, okay, that sounds actually kind of cool. But because we do learn that all of the Ignis AIs are based off of the people who went through that dual imprisonment.
Yeah.
And that I is Yusaku's.
Yeah, what a strange twist of fate brought them together.
I can't believe that Yusaku, before his horrible trauma, was a meme lord. But, like, it's just like, Spectre exists to be a counterpart to Yusaku, so why did he need to beat Aoi? Right? Like, why did that duel need to happen? I get why the duel between Go and Revolver had to happen, because we have to be like, oh, we found his secret best card, Mirror Force. I can't believe it. The oldest card in the world, Mirror Force. And, like, he makes, like, a noble sacrifice, but, like, Aoi's just doesn't make any sense, because it's sort of like, I've developed my character fully. And then it's like, well, what if we just denied all that for the sake of you losing to Spectre?
I mean, I thought this was supposed to be the point where she triumphs over that, because she was the one who gave him, because Spectre was the one who gave Aoi the brainwashing card all the way back at the beginning of the arc.
Right, and if you go back to our previous episode like this, we're like, yeah, I can't wait for Aoi to beat this creep. And it's like, didn't happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just unfortunate, because, like, there are totally cool ideas in this show. And, like, I still think watching the duels is cool, because they show off all these weird combos, and, like, link summoning is sort of like this weird thing that they get to play around with. But, like, it's just really lacking in terms of, like, character, because it keeps trying to focus on Yusaku, who's, like, the most boring human alive in this show.
At least I is there to make him fun.
Right, and so, like, hopefully he comes back soon, or he, like, I don't know, loosens up even a little bit. Jesus.
Oh, also we forgot about Emma. Poor Emma.
Oh yeah, I mean, Emma died way earlier, so...
Yeah, but she also died to foreshadow Mirror Force, which is dumb.
But it seems like everyone's kind of coming back from the preview that we've seen. Everyone's kind of coming back. Yusaku's working in that hot dog truck now with his friend Shoichi. And I guess he finally meets, like, Aoi and stuff in real life, like, outside of sort of a working relationship. So I do hope that Season 2 takes time to develop them as characters, because that's really what I come to Yu-Gi-Oh! For. Like, it's nice that they're doing this sort of, like, more mature storytelling sort of thing, but, like, if you can't give me good characters for it, like, why am I bothering?
Yeah, I agree with that. It feels like this show, that a lot of shows for me live or die by how good its characters are, and I want the show to have good ones.
Yeah, because it does, and they just keep falling to the wayside.
And then the other thing is that now that Ai is gone, Yusaku can finally lose a duel.
Yeah, thank God. Maybe they could just have a duel for fun once. Jesus. That'd be nice. But yeah, so here's hoping for second season. I think there are plenty of opportunities for it to develop better, but we'll see how that goes with time. And I've been thinking about it. I wonder if the recap episodes were intentional at this point because it's, like, so entranced with its own plot. Like, are they trying to make sure we really get it in our dang heads about it? I don't know. But we'll see how it develops. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens going forward.
Yeah, I'm pretty cautiously optimistic about Season 2, or Arc 2, or what have you.
We'll see what happens.
But hey, at least we got to hear someone shout, Deus Ex Machina!
Yep, man. And also that one of the cards is just called Spam Mail. It's good.
Yep, that too.
They're really buying into this whole cyber thing. They're really playing with it, so God bless them. Yeah, so that's all the anime. That's all of it. Every single one that we watched.
Yep.
And, despite some reservations about some of them, despite some drops, like, even the ones, like, even, like, Mitsuboshi Colors, which I dropped, is still, like, a perfectly fine show that just gave me everything I wanted before it ended. So, like, these aren't necessarily all, like, bad shows or anything. It's just, like, it's different strokes for different folks. And ultimately, we came out with a pretty good set of shows to talk about. Some are a lot more simple than others, but they still, evoke a good feeling. And so I'm really happy that we watched all of these. And I haven't had a chance to catch up yet, but from the way people are talking about the premiere of this upcoming season, seems like spring's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, I've already seen at least one good show this season.
Yeah, awesome. I love good shows. But yeah, so, I think overall, winter was good. Definitely, like, a good variety of shows that we came out of. Definitely a lot more serious shows, like your Ancient Magus Bride, your Garo, or not your Garos, but, like, your March Comes In Like a Lion, your things like that. And then, like, plenty of comedies. Again, Pop Team Epic. Things like Laid Back Camp, Teasing Master, Tagaki. There's a good gambit of types of shows that we ended up going through, and I think that's really good. Like, it's easy for us to fall into, like, oh yeah, we're just gonna watch, like, the genres that we really like, but there's a good spread for winter and going into spring of sort of, like, the type of action and the type of, comedy and stuff like that. So I'm really pumped, and I'm glad that winter turned out as good as it did.
Yeah, same here. I'm glad I kind of branched out in what shows I watch, and I'm gonna be doing it again in spring.
Yeah, even though we're both going to hell because we have, like, too many shows to watch.
Yup.
Before we go, we got some fan mail. So I feel like we should answer it. And the first one comes in from friend of the show, QB. This one reads, the author of The Ancient Magus Bride said in an interview, I was disappointed in the Beauty and the Beast story because the Beast turned into a human at the end. And I think this is reflected in how Elias is never truly human. How do you think Ancient Magus Bride compares to other works in this sort of genre evolution where the monster doesn't need to be humanized, like Shape of Water or Shrek? I think this does bring up, like, a point to it. Like, the thing about Ancient Magus Bride is there's not, like, a goal in mind where, like, oh, he's gonna become human at the end and, become beautiful. He's still gonna be this skeleton mage motherfucker whose only real, like, idea of humanity comes from the way that he develops with Chisei and the other people around him. And I think it's very interesting because it does present sort of this thing where, alright, I'm gonna concede. In, like, Shrek, it's like, beauty's on the inside. It's not about whether or not you're considered a monster. And the way that, like, Ancient Magus Bride and sort of Shape of Water is breaking those boundaries where it's like, there doesn't need to have to be a goal in mind to get you to be like, oh, I'm gonna fall in love with this person. It's about the inner beauty and the fact that these characters are flawed in certain ways that makes them charming, that makes them relatable. And I think that that's good in a way that's sort of like no one has to change in order to make anyone happy. People just have to be who they are and be able to grow, and that's what works out for them.
I don't have anything to say other than that. That pretty much sums up my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I think it is cool, though, that we are seeing more, like, Beauty and the Beast stories where the Beast is just, like, a beast man.
Finally, people can sink their teeth into monster boys.
Finally. Look, we've already got monster girls, right? Like, and they're just, like, cute girls. We need to take it one step further, right? I think we should be able to just kiss a mummy man. Like, nothing beautiful underneath. Just like a rotting corpse and the bandages, and I think that's fine. I think that's okay.
I do not want to kiss Cartophilis.
No, not him. But like, okay. So, the Dark Universe didn't work for Universal Pictures. What they do is they make the Kiss universe, and they make it so everyone wants to smooch all of the monsters in their library. So like, oh, it's like The Mummy, but a romance story. Alright, so that's what I'm looking for now. I think that Shape of Water and Ancient Mage's Bride have expanded the genre to accept the idea that we can be into traditionally non-beautiful things. Then we look at Universal again. We have the Invisible Man. Literally, it doesn't matter what he looks like, right? We can just expand that. Shape of Water, creature from the Black Lagoon, basically. See, we've already got it there. I also want to point out that I'm looking at a list of Universal Studios monsters. And in this list we have Abbott and Costello. Which I know that's not what they're going for. I assume that they mean like Abbott and Costello were part of some movies that had this go on. But I think it's really funny, the idea that Abbott and Costello is one of the Universal monsters. Yeah, here's like Abbott and Costello meet the Invisible Man and meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and meet the Mummy. Okay,
so I feel like having the Invisible Man for a boyfriend would be hard because how do you know where to kiss?
Oh, you're right. Oh, that is weird. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's something that the writer would have to come up with, is sort of like, figure out how to make it so that they can still be invisible, but you're able to like consummate romance. Again, this list of monsters includes Edgar Allan Poe right next to like the Phantom of the Opera and Dracula. Like, please.
Well, we already know that people want to smooch vampires.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, that just comes with the territory. But what if they were like really ugly vampires? What if they were just uggos?
Oh, no.
Well, we have like things like Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, right? Which is sort of a similar thing where it's sort of like, oh, they're monster people. But I don't know. Lady Frankenstein is still pretty genuinely attractive, or like traditionally attractive, I should say. And so, yeah, I think getting back to the point, I think it's good, and I hope that it develops more, because even in the case of like Shrek, it does tell a story of like acceptance of other people, and that you're not always going to find like this perfect person, but you'll find someone who can grow and develop with you.
You'll find someone who likes Smash Mouth.
No one actually like nothing. Our next question comes in from the Toughest Bean, and we discussed this a little bit in our discussion. Do you think that Darling in the Franxx' good points outweigh the fact that it is terminally horny? And on a larger scale, how horny is too horny for anime? So, we discussed this a bit. You think that as it's developed, the good points of Darling in the Franxx has sort of outweighed its horniness, at least within the current episodes. Like, it's still a bad horny early on.
Yes, I do. Also, I want to say that there's no good answer for this question, because how much horny is too horny is something that is definitely going to differ from person to person.
Right, and so, like, on a personal level, it's very much about how it's treated. Like, horniness on its own is not bad. It's within what context of the stories that I think is important to look at. And when it comes to, like, the leering ass shots of all of these teens in Darling in the Franxx, that's a bit much for me. But I understand that, like, to some extent that is it is also within the idea of the show in that it is about, in some ways, like sexuality and relationships. So, it is about sort of the intent of it. Like, if it's just to titillate, I'm a little less interested in it than if they can, like, I don't know, use it to further a theme or storytelling or have it less.
I can agree there. I don't like it when it's just, this is a horny thing. I want there to be some sort of depth to it.
And there are totally places for things that are just terminally horny. Like, as we talked about at the top of the show, To Love Ru is a show that basically just exists to titillate the reader. And, like, that's not for me, but there are also, like, audiences for it, by which I mean horny teens. Like, there is always a place for titillation. I don't go to it when I look for entertainment. So I think that's where the distinction lies for me, is, like, when I want to watch something, I want to watch something for, like, more artistic merit than just, like, can I get my rocks off to it? That's a separate sort of, like, idea to me.
I'm terminally curious, so I will watch some horny things to see if there's something under it, or sometimes it's just bad, because sometimes I just want to watch garbage.
And sure, that's also acceptable. Like, it's going to differ so much from people, but, like, personally, it's like, I think that there is a time and place for things that are horny, and when it comes to watching anime, that's not what I'm looking for in a lot of cases. So what I want is, if they're going to have to do that, then I want there to be a purpose to it, a thematic sort of thing. Like with Scum's Wish from last year, like, it is a show that definitely, like, has sexuality within it, but it is more to tell its story about sexuality and romance and relationships more than it is to, like, titillate the viewer. That said, sometimes there's a show that sort of revels in a sort of fan servicey atmosphere, and the content outside of that is enticing enough that I kind of deal with it to watch. So it's super suggestive, and I'm a hypocrite. And then the final one comes from Shaded Spriter, which just asks sort of, what was the best show to curl up and enjoy a cup of coffee with for this season? And so, basically, what is the comfiest show for you? And for me, I brought it up before, it's sort of laid back camp. Laid back camp is just something where you can sit back, you can enjoy it for what it is, which is just a bunch of girls having fun doing things that they enjoy. In this case, camping. And that's entertaining in and of itself.
For me, that's probably today's menu for the Emiya family. Because it's just nice to see these characters happy, and I get to see some delicious food being made.
Right, and there's just no stakes to it, right? Like,
yeah, that too. I was gonna say, I can't say Teasing Master Tagaki because sometimes it dragged a little for me, so that's why I'm going with this.
Sure, alright. Yeah, cool, alright. And that is gonna do it for our show today. I had a lot of fun here. I hope you did too, as we talked about the anime we watched. I enjoy being able to bounce off my thoughts with other people and kind of get these other perspectives.
Same here.
And so, to end this off, tell the folks where they can find you online.
Hi, I'm Xain0, and you can find me on Twitter at Xain0, Xainzero, and I tweet a lot about things I like, which is anime, video games, and anime video games. Maybe I'll get you interested in something. Who knows?
Oh, that reminds me. What's your new anime game that you're playing?
Right now I'm playing Ni no Kuni 2.
Awesome. Okay, so I've heard a lot of good things. What's your thought on it? Like, I hear that it basically has nothing to do with Ni no Kuni 1 in terms of sort of like how it plays or anything, and is just like a much better executed concept.
It is extremely that. The battle system is more of a standard RPG kind of thing, and it's got a lot of extra features to it. At the moment, it feels like, an RPG from the PS2 in terms of how much depth it has to its features. It feels like back when RPGs could have bigger budgets compared to now, where they have more limited budgets because of the difficulty of developing on these big fancy consoles.
Alright, cool. I've been thinking of picking that up, but it's also like, I already have too many games that I haven't played, so we'll see.
That's fair, and this one is infinity hours long because it has 1,000,000,000 billion side quests.
Oh, I love games that never end. I love JRPGs. I own so many JRPGs and I need to finish them. I'm so scared.
Same, but also I finished
I don't know, I'm like halfway through Radiant Historia at this point, and it's just like, oh, I really like this. And also it's going to take me the rest of my life to finish.
Hell, I need to get the remake for that myself because I love the original DS game.
Yeah, and what's nice is that it sort of like splits up into two stories. So it's like, here's the original version of the story if you haven't played if you haven't played the original on DS. And if you have, here's the weird version that we made that sort of like introduces new characters and stuff. So that's nice.
Neat.
Anyways, as for me, you can find me online at @Chorpsaway, CHORPSAWAY on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube at the channel Chorpsaway SA. And you can find the podcast at Coco_disaster on Twitter. And you can also find us at cocodisaster.com, where you can find our RSS feed. You'll be able to find the archives for our YouTube versions of our podcasts. You'll be able to find a link to the text-only blog that I do with friend of the show QB, which is called Vanilla Blessing, which is vanilla-blessing.tumblr.com. And there you can also figure out where you'll be able to contact us. So, going into this season, the 2 single servings that we're doing this time is we're doing Psycho-Pass Season 1 with my friend the J of Spade, which will sort of discuss the original story within that franchise, since from what I understand, the second season and the movies coming after it kind of come at it from different angles, so we're sort of splitting this coverage up. So we're handling the first season of Psycho-Pass, beloved cyberpunk dystopia story by Gano
Urobuchi, yeah.
The Booch, as they like to call him. And then after that, I will be discussing with my friend Devious Vacuum Kakegurui, the 2017 gambling anime adaptation of the manga of the same name. And yeah, we'll be talking about gambling and psychology and just how much fan service I'm really willing to deal with to get a good gambling show.
Godspeed.
It's gonna be a time. But until then, I've been Chorpsaway.
And I've been Xain Zero.
And sweet dreams.